everyone. Welcome to HED Talks. Oh my gosh, these people. The Astors. We're talking about the Astors today. And I struggled because you know how we do our review, and a lot of you want me to do the review. But I didn't know what to do because these Astors are unbelievable. And there's a lot to tell about them. So here's what I've decided to do. We'll do a quick review, and we're going to start with a couple of generations of Astors, because every generation, they seem to just like beat they just have to top one another. So we're going to pick up on it next week. That was the only way I could do it. And at that, I know, John, I hate to give you a heart attack, but I've got 119 slides at that. And I'm only halfway through the Astors. All right, so we're going to get started. So we're in the middle now of our new series, or I guess I can call it our current series, which is the Gilded Age. And I already spilled the beans on this. Who are we talking about today? Yeah, we're talking about the Astors. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you about them. But we're going to do a very quick review so that everybody is caught up and knows where we've been and where we're going, okay? So last week, who did we talk about? Who remembers? There's a clue. Rockefeller, excellent. No, you weren't even here.
I know.
And you knew that. You got it right. Very, very good. Yeah. We talked about J.D. Rockefeller. And remember how he was just kind of struggling at first. He and his brother had a little rig there. And then some bigwig came around thinking that he was going to be able to get this guy under his thumb. Remember who that was? That was Vanderbilt, yes. And then we cautioned Vanderbilt to be careful what you ask for, right? Yeah. Because when he entered into a business deal with J.D. Rockefeller, he really had no idea what was coming. He did not anticipate the smackdown that he was going to get, did he? So a little bit about Rockefeller. Remember, he was born to these two people. You remember his father, William Avery Rockefeller, and his mother, Eliza. And William Avery Rockefeller was a what? A crook. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. That's very to the point. Yeah, he was a con man. He was an absolute con man. Do you remember the nickname they had for him? What'd they call him? Devil Bill. He was Devil Bill. He's known as Devil Bill. Yes, and he was never around. He was always on the run, going from one place to another, selling his cure-alls. And then I also think it's worth mentioning again, the primary ingredient in his elixirs.
Petroleum.
Excellent! Petroleum, which is very fascinating because, of course, his son grows up and goes into what? Oil. So that was, yeah, so I just wanted to mention that again because it was kind of cool. Now, occasionally, he did show up and engage with his family, and this is how he did that, remember? Yes. Remember the other incident from last week where Devil Bill, the dad, tells young J.D., jump in my arms. And so little J.D. jumps, and what does Devil Bill do?
You let him go.
Nice guy. A way to, develop trust. But his mother had an influence on him as well, right? Remember, she was a very devout Christian from the Baptist church. And so she told her children, even though they struggled to survive because Bill left them without any means to support themselves. They just, remember J.D. and his brother? They were selling confections. There were also little tiny loan sharks out in their neighborhood. Remember that? Yeah, they were giving out loans and collecting interest on that. And that's how the family was able to survive. So that was hard enough to deal with. But then do you remember that Devil Bill finally was arrested? Do you remember that? He was found guilty of raping a woman. And then he took off. He took off, and there was very little contact with him after that. But he took off, and he left the family to deal with that shame. With that shame. And then later on, you see in the Rockefeller dynasty that the whole family for generations, they're very secretive, right?
Yeah.
They're very, very secretive. They really don't want to, go out there and be demonstrative in what they're doing and how they're spending their money. They're very secretive. It may come from this situation. Anyways, as we were discussing, the boys grew up, the two brothers grew up, and they opened up this little oil rig. All right, they saw that's where the money is, and so they opened that up. And that was when Vanderbilt comes after them, and he wants an exclusive deal. Rockefeller is desperate for this partnership because it's going to save him, right? It's going to bring him up into the big time. So he really wants this. And he was going to, do whatever, agree to whatever, except on his way to go meet with Vanderbilt, J.D. Rockefeller is running late and he misses his train. Do you remember that? He missed his train. And what a divine intervention that was. Right? Remember that? Yeah. Yes. The train derailed and he would have died in that. And so when he did ultimately reschedule and meet with Vanderbilt, this is a new man. Because what does he think?
Manifest destiny.
Yes, he thinks that yes, exactly. He feels like God saved him for a reason. And now he's got all the confidence in the world because who's behind him now?
God.
Exactly. So when he goes in to meet Vanderbilt, he's going to play hardball, right?
Yeah.
So they make a deal, and it's an exclusive deal. And Rockefeller actually does not have the means to keep up his end of the bargain. He doesn't have enough oil to keep Vanderbilt's trains full. So he's thinking about it, and what he comes up with is he doesn't like this whole drilling for oil business anyways. It's quite a gamble, isn't it? You might hit, you might not hit, all right? He just thinks it's too much of a gamble. But if he can stabilize kerosene, because isn't that the light source of the day? Mm-hmm. We don't have Edison, not yet. That is the light source of the day, but it was a little unsteady, the kerosene. It could blow up. So he employs a scientist that can stabilize it, and when he does that, he creates what? And he's marketing it very strategically. Standard oil, meaning every time you purchase from me, you will purchase the same product. It's going to be the same. You can count on this. And then this does what for him?
Well,
it makes him enormously wealthy. It makes him enormously wealthy. So wealthy that he's able to gobble up what?
All the other people.
Excellent, yes, and so he becomes the first. Exactly, yes, exactly. Okay, so if you're in control of this market, do you really need to keep your bargain with Vanderbilt?
no.
No, you really don't. And so he starts making deals with Vanderbilt's competitors. And once that happens, Vanderbilt is not the kind of guy to lay down dead. He's not going to roll over and play dead over this, is he? No. So he starts a coalition with who? With his competitors. All right, so now all the competitors are going against Rockefeller. He's got to solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
So if all of the railroad owners are getting together and not allowing Rockefeller to price gouge them, then Rockefeller has to think outside of the box. He needs another way to transport his oil, doesn't he? He comes up with, you're exactly right, you're all right. He comes up with, this is brilliant. I mean, you have to think about this is absolutely brilliant. What he comes up with, rather than transporting on trains, he's going to transport how? With pipes, and this is a huge gamble. This is an enormous gamble. He's laying down all these miles and miles of pipe. Does he know that it's going to work?
No.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't, but he does this. He puts it down, and it does work, doesn't it? It works, and in fact, we're doing it to this day, aren't we? It's still how we do it. All right, so this is pipeline back then, and look at what we've got today. All right, so you have to think, this guy, he's pretty sure of himself, right? He's very sure of himself. And so he is one of those new money, filthy rich people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does society think of him? Very bad. Yes, very bad. Because remember, we started out looking at this rise in wealth and what is it coexisting with it, right alongside of it.
The poor people.
Abject poverty, right? Abject poverty. People in broken down tenement homes and working in factories without any protections. All right, and so these ultra wealthy people are highly criticized, and this is actually a cartoonist from a newspaper at the time, okay? So they want to come after him and they take him to court, and this is under the Sherman Antitrust Act, where they want to break down that monopoly, right? Laws against monopolies, and so what they have Rockefeller do is break up his company, correct? That'll teach him, because now he's even richer than he was before. All right, so now he's got all of these companies. He's even wealthier than he was before. So he is portrayed in the media, in the public, as an absolute monster, but we did some digging and we found out some things about him. Okay, remember his mother? Remember Eliza? And she was the predominant influence in his life. She stayed, she was there, she was with the children. Okay, so what do we know about J.D. Rockefeller? Well, we know that he was a member of the Underground Railroad. That was not highly publicized, but he was. He was a member of the Underground Railroad. We also know that he established Spelman College in honor of his wife, Laura Spelman, who he loved and adored and respected their whole life. And then also we took a look at his charitable contributions, and I'll just give you a moment. But we also, last week, we wanted to take a look at how the new money transitioned into old money. And so we wanted to follow those Vanderbilts and Rockefellers into today. And so taking a very quick look, these are the Vanderbilts, right? And they didn't do as well, did they? No. So right, you've got Vanderbilt, and he built up this huge, enormous wealth, and then the descendants that grew up in that wealth just didn't understand that this is hard work, and we have to put back in. We can't just keep taking out. So ultimately, what happens to them? It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. And then they are, there's scandal in the newspaper. You all remember this case. We talked about that last week. And then Gloria, the daughter, Gloria, she grows up. And we know Gloria Vanderbilt had to do her own, she had to create her own career. She had to make her own money, right? Yeah, she had to make her own money, and she was, you remember Gloria Vanderbilt Jeans?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure, of course.
Everybody remembers that.
Yes.
Okay. And then she has her children, and there are no trust funds for these kids. All right? All right, one of the brothers is no longer with us, but the other one has to work for a living. Right? Yes, he has to work for a living. All right, what about the Rockefellers? Here's 3 generations of Rockefellers right here. They have a different take on things, remember? So they are hard workers. They live an unassuming life. They're not going to flaunt their money. They try to stay out of the spotlight, but they know that they have to do what? Yeah, yes. And so they also realize that the relationships and the partnerships that they cultivate will perpetuate their family fortune. And so they're very interested in developing relationships with powerful people, and that would include politicians. And so now we know that the Rockefellers get into politics, right? They get into politics so much so that we've got what? Yeah, Vice President. Nelson Rockefeller is Vice President. And so they do stay out of the spotlight as far as scandals go. But there was a tragedy in the family. You remember we talked about Michael last week? Oh my goodness, yes. He did not go into the family business, which would have been politics, banking, lawyers. He didn't do that. He was interested in anthropology and art, in particular primitive art. And so his love and his passion brought him where? New Guinea. Excellent. Who said that? Who remembered that? Yes, brought him into New Guinea, and in particular working with this tribe here. Now, this tribe is known for cannibalism. Yes, the tribe is known for cannibalism. So when Michael's boat tips over, it was thought the people with him he would just swim to shore, but he never resurfaces. And so the rumor is that the tribe had gotten him, and then the family, of course, they're the wealthy Rockefellers, and they've sent out absolutely every possible means of search, and he has never, to this day, been found. And so sadly, that rumor perpetuates, and the family, of course, would rather, their public statement is that they believe that Michael drowned in that boating accident. So this is a tragedy, but it's not a scandal, is it? No. And so the Rockefeller family today has, many generations later, been able to keep themselves out and away from that kind of mark or scar on their reputation. So that's what we looked at last week, but that was new money. What about old money? We have old money families too, don't we? And that's where the clash comes into play here, because the old money did not want anything to do with the new money, right? And why is that? Excellent. Yes. Yes, you're all right. You're all exactly right. Old money is people, families, who go generations back in their wealth. And, they're just so much better than the new money people, because they're just poor folks that suddenly made it rich in this new world that was happening here in America. Well, let's take a look at probably the most influential old money family that we have. This is kind of our version of royalty, right? We don't have royalty. We have the Astors. All right, so we're going to take a look at them. But you know what? That story starts out in exactly the same way that new money people starts out. It's the same thing. All right, so where did they get their money? Pat, you asked me that last week, and I'm going to answer you this week. Okay? I promised you I was going to go into it in depth, and here we are. Okay, this is John Jacob Astor. All right, and he is from Waldorf, Germany. He was born there in 1763. All right, his father was a very small-time butcher in their small village. And so John and his brother were working with the father in his butcher shop, and the brother went to the New World first. All right, so the plan was the brother was going to go first, settle down, and they were going to be butchers. They were going to keep up with the family business, right? And then they saved a little bit more money. And when I say saved money, I mean he saved exactly enough to get passage on a ship that's going to take him to America. He comes there and he arrives penniless because the trip cost him everything he had. Now, while he's on the trip, it also thwarts the great plan, the great butcher shop plan, because John meets a really interesting character. And the guy that he meets on the ship on the way over to the U.S. is a fur trader. And John's really, really impressed with this guy because this guy is doing very well. And he probably had some fancy fur hat and coat, and I'm sure he was very impressive. So John is thinking, maybe that's what I should get into. I want to get into the fur trade here. So he ultimately gets to New York, all right? So he arrives in New York. That's where his brother is. But he doesn't go into the family business there. What he does is he's thinking, I'm going to do this fur trading thing. And so he's going to start out at the bottom. You know what he's doing? He's smacking fur pelts to get the dust and bugs out of them. That was his job. I know that this is a woman beating a rug, but I couldn't find the illustration I wanted. All right, this was like the closest I could come. All right, but you get the idea. That was his job. That's how he starts out. But it doesn't take too long, you know. He's going to become a fur trader. And there weren't a lot of people willing to do that. So it was kind of like easy for him to get that promotion. And why weren't there a lot of people, even though it was lucrative? Well, because it was really hard. A lot of the trails that you had to go were so narrow that you couldn't bring a horse or a donkey or any kind of a pack animal. These are very dangerous, narrow trails, and you wind up going by yourself. So you're alone. I'll just give you a minute because that's really beautiful, isn't it? All right, we'll enjoy that for a sec. All right, so you have to go out by yourself. You have to go out by yourself on these dangerous roads. And what else is out there in the wilderness? Wild animals and what?
Indians.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, natives. All right, and you're carrying all of your supplies, everything you need, and you're also, because if you're a fur trader, you have to have something to trade, right? Yeah, you can't just say, oh, look, I've just made a beautiful snowball. Could I have one of those pelts? So you're carrying pounds and pounds of whatever you're going to trade, whatever you have brought, whatever merchandise you have brought. And so it's really unbelievable, back-breaking, hard work. But he thought that this was worth it. John Jacob thought this is worth it. And why do you think it would be worth it? At the time, what?
Furs were very highly valued.
Excellent. Yes, yes, you're both right. Furs were the it thing. Okay? All right, does any of this look familiar? All right, fur was all the rage. It was absolutely all the rage. And you could get huge markup on the fur that you were selling. Everybody wanted it. And then, of course, there was this guy. Right? You want... Everyone had to have a raccoon hat, right? All right, so there was huge money. Fur trading was huge, huge money. And so John Jacob was perfectly willing to do that hard work. He also, he had like a secret weapon too. All right, do you know that back home, as he's traveling, he's got somebody waiting for him. And her name is Sarah Todd. Now, Sarah Todd isn't from a very wealthy family, but they have enough money so that she has a dowry. And guess how much her dowry is? It's a whopping $300. That's pretty good, though, back then. $300 is her dowry. They get married, and John Jacob is wanting to open up his own fur trading shop. That would be the thing to do, right? Don't make the money for somebody else, make it for yourself. And he's going to be able to do that because he has her. She turns out to be an absolutely brilliant businesswoman. So she's got $300 and she's a brilliant businesswoman. I mean, he's just so lucky, right? So while he's out there, roaming the wilderness and making these trades, she's back in New York and she's taking care of the business there in New York at home. All right, she's perfectly capable of handling it. Pretty good, huh? Yeah, so he had these outposts. His guys were right behind Lewis and Clark, and they went through and helped to develop the Oregon Trail. So all kinds of interesting things that John Astor did while he was a fur trader. And
what happened to his brother?
I think he's a butcher. That's why we don't know about him. I don't really know. So now we know that Sarah, his wife, is back home, right? Yeah. And she's taking care of the business from that end of things, correct? And we know that she's brilliant. And so guess what? So all of her neighbors, of course, were delighted for her and admired her, right? Wrong. No, how could a woman be a brilliant business person? Well, that couldn't possibly be. She must be. She was accused of witchcraft because she had done so well. Now, whether they really believed that or if it was competition trying to promote some propaganda and take them down, it didn't work. It did not work. But Sarah Astor was accused of witchcraft. Yes. Okay, so now he's become, or I should say they have become, so wealthy that they've been able to buy a ship, and now they're going to ship their furs under their own name, under their own fleet, to Europe, right? So John Astor thinks to himself, all right, what I would really like to do is I would like to corner the market someplace else. Guess where he goes?
China.
Yeah, he wants to go to China because not only can he make a great deal with the country of China, but also on the way back, does his ship need to be empty?
No.
No, does not need to be empty. He can fill it with what?
Spices and tea.
and silks, right? So this guy, he's making money coming and going. All right, coming and going. He's making money. So he becomes the first billionaire. Now, as he's doing business with China, there are some restrictions, political restrictions, land restrictions, things that are going on with fur trading, and so he doesn't have the same access to the tribes that he had before, and so he thinks, all right, well, I'm in business with China. I think I'll get into something else with them, in addition to the pelts. Do you know what he is shipping over to China in addition to the pelts? Any guesses?
Alcohol.
What?
Alcohol.
Opium. No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I don't think it's something that the Astor family brags about. But yeah, so John Jacob Astor was selling opium in China. And of course, you know, that blew up.
Yeah,
And there was the Opium War. Yes.
I thought the English got involved in this too.
Oh, they did. Yeah. They did. They absolutely did.
I never thought Astor was involved.
Yes, he definitely was.
So,
Yeah, he was involved in that as well. So, you know, it created a lot of trouble. And so he's thinking to himself, perhaps I should change course about now. Do you think that was a wise thing for him to do?
yes, I did.
Yeah, he does. He thinks, all right, I'm going to change course right now. And he had a brilliant idea. So now he's going to leave the fur trading business and he is going to go into real estate. And there he is. He's in Manhattan, yes? And there's all kinds of farm land there, and so he has an insight that this Manhattan is going to be an important place one day. He has a little insight into that. So he wants to buy up some land, and he gets a really, really good price. All right, he finds a farm that belongs to a whiskey distiller who is in serious debt. Big time debt. And so he's able to purchase this piece of land for a real bargain price. And you may recognize that piece of land today as Times Square. Yes. Today, that piece of land that Astor bought 200 years ago, today it is Times Square. But he's gotten bit by the real estate bug, and so he wants to keep going with that. All right? It's working out well for him. And here's his philosophy. Buy in acres and sell in lots. And so he has made himself quite a bit of money in real estate. Now, while they're doing all this business, they are taking care of the other things that need to be taken care of too, if you want to create a family dynasty, right? Okay, they have children, all right, and you'll see here that these are the names of the children. But sadly, I could not find a single family tree that included the firstborn son. John Jacob Astor II. I absolutely could not. That's why I was late today. I could not find a family tree that included John Jacob II, John Jacob Jr. And do you know why that is?
No.
He lived, but he had mental health issues.
Oh.
He had mental health issues, and I just think that it's so sad that history would have hidden this person because he lived to adulthood. He outlived his father, who lived into his 80s. But he's not there, and I could not find one. So there is a John Jacob Astor II. And his father did love him. We do know that John Jacob, the father, and his mother, Sarah, they purchased a house and had a very tall brick wall built around the home. I tried to find out what the issue was, and I could not find any information on that, but I do know, I did read that a physician was hired to spend 24/7 with this young boy. And they built the wall around their home for his protection. So, I don't want to speculate, but it was a serious mental health issue. But we do know that he survived his father, who died in his 80s. Okay, now Sarah died in 1832. All right, and then, John's living, he absolutely adored her, and he went into a severe depression after she passed away, and he did not want to stay in the house without her. And so he had their home demolished, and what he did was he built the very first luxury hotel. It was called Astor House. It's a luxury hotel. It's a very first one in America, and it cost an astronomical $2 a night. That was the price for it back then, which was extreme. It was so extreme, it was patronized by the best people. We know that Abraham Lincoln was there, Charles Dickens, Edgar Allan Poe, the Prince of Wales. He was the prince, not king yet at the time when he stayed there. And, of course, you would have to have Davy Crockett. Because it's just the right thing to do, right? You must have Davy Crockett there to stay in the house. And then ultimately, John did pass away, and he was in his 80s, as we already said. And as they were reading his will, there was shock. There was shock throughout the room. Everybody was so surprised because John Jacob Astor had absolutely no charitable giving. Here he is, a billionaire. He had all of this money, and he was not known to give to charity. There's a conversation, we don't know if it really happened, but it was reported that a minister was chatting with him and said, how wonderful, you have all this money, and there's so much good that you could do that must feel wonderful. And John Jacob replied, well, I suppose it would if I were ever so inclined. So he had no desire to give to charity. So it was absolutely shocking when in his will he left $400,000 for a library, to build a library in New York. And this library would be called the Astor Library. Do you know that the Astor Library still exists today?
No.
It does, but you might know it better as.
Oh.
Yes. So we have the New York Public Library as a result of an endowment by John Jacob Astor. All right. So that's why we have the New York Library today. The other thing he did, remember they came from Waldorf, Germany? Yes, and then he also left money for a poorhouse in his hometown, and that was dedicated to taking care of poor children and the elderly. So that was pretty surprising that he did that on his deathbed. Up until then, he hadn't given anything to anybody. All right. Now, he was also very secretive because he told his son, his second son is named William, and William Backhouse. Backhouse is, I know this is his name, William Backhouse Astor. And Backhouse is the name of a family friend, and so he's named after a family friend. But he tells his son in his will, after I die, to burn all my business papers. So you know shady stuff is going on, right? I mean, he does not want anyone to find out his business dealings. So William does do that, okay? There he is. That's actually him. William Backhouse Astor. All right. Now, he's not too interesting. I guess he's just like a workaholic. He just works and works and works. But, you know, he did do a couple of things. All right, one, he is into the real estate like his father was, except with this boom in industry. Remember, we took a look at that in the rapid industrialization. So what do the Astor family do to accommodate people?
Built tenements.
Yeah, but they weren't interested in keeping them up, were they?
No, they weren't.
No. So now, all right, so we might have the first luxury hotel, but we also have the first slumlords
Yes.
in the same family, He also buys this piece of land. You know how his father was interested in, choice parts of Manhattan? Well, he buys this piece of land, and that eventually becomes Fifth Avenue. Yeah, yes, the Astors built up Fifth Avenue. And then they're all named John and William, it's so confusing. He doubled his father's wealth. All right, so that's not too bad, right? All right, so he did pretty good, but he didn't, other than that, that's all he did. All right, and then he has children. Now, these sons of William are very interesting, all right? They're very interesting. And we're going to get more into these two next week. But we've got William Backhouse Jr., and then we've got John. Now, they're going to split. Do you see there's the United States line, and then there's the English line? Yeah, what does that mean? They're brothers. They're not cousins, they're brothers. So how does that happen? How do we split like that? Well, this is how that went down. So their father buys the boys mansions, side-by-side mansions. They're side-by-side mansions. And these two guys do not get along. They hate one another. And yet, they're stuck living next door to each other. Even their Newport homes are side by side. All right, there's a little bit of yard at least there. But these two guys, so there's quite a bit of tension going on between the two brothers. They just hate each other. They do not like each other. Now, the second brother, the younger brother, he marries this lady. You must remember her.
Mary.
Right?
Mary.
Caroline?
Yes.
Yes, Caroline, Mrs. Astor. She's come up throughout this. Okay, she's the one who had the 400, the elite group. She's the one who shunned all the new money people, wouldn't let them in. They weren't as good as she was. Now, she was a total snob. So how does she get to be so high and mighty? Where does that come from? So we're going to take a quick look at her. She's married to William, all right, the second born, and she is from one of the original Dutch families that settled in the 1600s, and of course it was New Amsterdam then, right?
Yes.
It was called New Amsterdam, and it's not called New York until the English come in and take over, and then the name changed to New York. So they're already established there, and her family is the Schermerhorns, and they've been there for generations. Okay, she is the youngest daughter of the Schermerhorn family. So she's the baby of the family. Does that say anything to you? Yeah. Yeah, she probably would. Yeah. Yes. All right. So she's the baby of the family, and then that also means she probably was spoiled. But because of her older siblings, she's probably not going to get the prime marriage arrangement. You know what I mean? Because they had to take care of that with the older siblings. So when it comes down to Caroline, they called her Lena.
Oh.
Lena. When it comes down to Lena getting married, the Schermerhorns aren't really thrilled about the prospects of marrying an Astor, because at the time, you know, they're kind of like new money, and she's old money, and also she's got to marry the second son. And does the second son inherit as much as the first son? No, she's just like, she's really upset about this, and she does not want to enter into this marriage. She's from this old, well-established family that's been there forever. They settled the area, and she's not at all interested in this marriage. But the family is impressed with the millions and millions of dollars that they have, right? Okay, so they're going to go ahead with this arranged marriage. Now, what do you think about the couple? Do you think this is a happy couple?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, they're not happy at all. She totally looks down on him. He wanted nothing to do with her. They're both forced into this situation, and he's kind of got to stick around because he has to produce what? An heir. Children, yes, but in particular, a son, right? Has to produce a son. Well,
First IVF?
this is the Mrs. Astor, who had to stay with this man she hates and who hates her. And their first baby is a girl. Their second baby is a girl. Their third baby is a girl. Their fourth baby is a girl.
Wow. Kind of a lot of girls.
His fault.
Their fifth baby,
Is the boy.
yes! Finally. All right, so it took an awful long time. She's married to, she's got to be with this man, you know, like that. All these years. Oh my gosh, they absolutely hate one another. And the way she is happy is if she is throwing these grand, elaborate parties, right? Remember, she's throwing these wonderful, beautiful events that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and she's only inviting the very best people. Well, while they're working on that son, he's got to stick around, and apparently he would come home like completely drunk, stumble in, cause a scene, just humiliate her. He's also having affairs, and he's not trying to hide it. This is a really sincerely miserable woman. She arranges with his friends to keep him, if she's having a party, if it's a party night, she has paid them to keep him away. Keep him away for the night. Okay? So finally, they have that son. That's not him. I just found a baby. That's not him. I don't know who that is. It's somebody. It could be a girl for all I know. So finally they have their son, and this is John Jacob Astor the fourth, but they call him Jack, and so that's exactly what I'm gonna do from here on out. Jack. Okay, so there's Jack. Now that they've got Jack, then what can the father do? He can take off. That's exactly right. He can take off. Yes, William's gone. The press calls his yacht the harem yacht. It's the harem yacht. All right. Now, as he is, just seafaring away with his company, he meanders down south, and so he's actually going to do a little bit of business when he's down south in Florida, and he's buying up land, and William Astor, actually is one of the influential people who established Florida as a resort area. All right, so while he's philandering and sailing and enjoying himself, he also managed to put his stamp on history. So he has established Florida as a resort area. Okay, now back at home, we've got Lena, right? We've got Lena, and after the Civil War, then we know all of these new industries are exploding, right? And so Lena is very concerned because there's a lot of this new money riffraff hanging around in New York, and she's got how many girls? 4. And so what if one of them hooks up with one of her daughters? She had to protect her daughters. That's where this whole elitist thing she claims comes from. It was merely to protect her daughters from this new money riffraff. And she had such control over New York high society that she really was top dog. She was in charge of everything. And then she got so full of herself that she started telling the post office, well, everybody knows who I am. Really, I'm just telling people to simply address their correspondence as Mrs. Astor. You really don't need any more than that. Everybody knows who I am. All right, and so she does that, and people do. All right, because you do whatever Mrs. Astor says. If you want to be in the elite group, you do whatever she says. And so now there is this big thing about Mrs. Astor. Everybody knows her. She is the, with a capital T, Mrs. Astor. Well, there are other Astors, right? There are other women Astors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So Lena's nephew, remember how they live side by side?
Yeah.
Her nephew, we're going to call him Waldorf. Okay, so her nephew is furious because he got married, and isn't his wife Mrs. Astor?
Yeah.
And wait a minute, isn't his mother Mrs. Astor?
Uh-huh.
Well, he's absolutely furious, the gall of this woman, to think that she is the one and only Mrs. Astor. And so he is having a real problem with this, and he goes up against Caroline, Lena, Mrs. Astor. And of course, at this point in time, she's got so much power. Guess who wins?
She does.
She does. She wins. She wins. Well, young nephew Waldorf has a little tantrum. He has a little temper tantrum, and because he's lost this battle with her, he decides he's going to take off and he's going to live in England. All right, and he's left with this quote: "America is not a fit place for a gentleman to live." And this is actually a cartoon in a newspaper from that time. All right, now we're going to find out. Now remember, we saw in the family tree there's an American line and there's an English line. All right, that's it. William Waldorf, he initiates the English line. And we're going to follow that more next week. All right, we'll see what that line does. And now we've got his cousin, Jack. Remember Jack? All right, so he's back here in New York. But before Waldorf leaves, he decides, before he goes, he needs to do one little thing. And the one little thing that he's going to do is, remember the houses side by side? Yeah, well, he has his torn down, and he puts up a luxury hotel, because remember, that's in the family, right? That's in the family. His grandfather did that. So he's going to put up a hotel. He calls it the Waldorf Hotel, and he makes it bigger than his aunt's house, because remember, it's right next door? All right? So not only does this overshadow her home, she's got to live with construction for however long that lasted, right? Construction right next door. And then she's going to put up with, here's some original photos, okay? She's going to put up with, the guests, the comings and goings happening there at the Waldorf Hotel. But worst of all is that the Waldorf Hotel absolutely ruins her. Do you know why? You could go to this elegant, elaborate dining room, bar, hotel any night of the week. Do you have to wait for an invitation from Mrs. Astor
No.
to get dressed up and go have a great time? No, that's gone. That is all gone. People are going any night of the week to go and have that kind of fun. And so it ruins her. Now Jack, who, rumor has it, is a real mama's boy, he's furious. He's absolutely furious. Remember, this is William and Caroline's one boy that they were waiting so long for. Yeah, so he's grown up now, and the one who built the hotel is his cousin. Okay, so he is absolutely furious. So what does he do? He moves his mom, in upper New York, and he tears down their home, and then he's going to build himself a hotel right next door to compete right next door. So now we have the Waldorf and we have the Astoria, correct? Yeah. Yes. So there's some healthy competition there, right? Yes, all over the fact that one of the women wants to call herself Mrs. That's how all this comes to be. All right? But eventually cooler heads prevail, because we know now that it doesn't stay that way, does it?
No.
So the cousins are thinking, the businessmen in them take over, get the better of them, and they're thinking, you know what, instead of competing against one another, why don't we join forces? We'll join forces, and then what do we have? Exactly. Everybody knows the Waldorf Astoria. Now, eventually that became outdated, and so what they had to do was they moved it and they rebuilt the new Waldorf Astoria. Okay, so now what happened to the property where the old hotels were? Do you know what happened there?
Grand Central Station.
Nope.
Central Park.
Nope.
The train
Walk
comes in
to
at the
the
bottom.
center.
Nope.
Madison Square Garden.
Empire State Building.
Oh my God, Effie, you are the best.
What?
The Empire State Building. Yes.
The only one that was left.
It was the only thing left. Oh yes, the Empire State Building. All right, so the fight that these two people had become a famous hotel that ultimately then becomes the site of the Empire State Building. All right, now as I promised, there is a lot more intrigue to come with this family, but we're overdue. We're over time
Yeah.
right now, and so I'm going to tell you the rest of their story, and then I'm also going to bring into that. Have you ever heard of the Dollar Princesses?
No.
Do you know what that?
The ones that went to England with their money?
Exactly. So I'm going to explain because it all ties in together. So next week we're going to finish the Astors, and then I'm also going to explain exactly what a dollar princess is. All right? You never heard of it? Well, you're going to know everything about it next Wednesday. Okay? All right. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll see you next week.